There are things they will never tell you. And the worst part, many times, not even they realize what they're doing. But you feel it. You feel it in the glance that changes without explanation, in the words laced with poison disguised as sweetness, in the tests that seem harmless, but slowly drain your peace. The truth? It's not that they're evil. It's that many men are still blind. You were raised to please, to understand, to endure. But no one taught you how to see. And that's why today many are emotionally trapped, thinking it's love. The harsh reality, you don't lose women for being cold, you lose them for not being firm. Being a man isn't about pleasing, it's about holding your ground, even when the world tries to shake you. Especially when that world wears lipstick. And if you have the courage to open your eyes now, you'll uncover 10 signs they hide, signs only a man with self-awareness and emotional virtue can see from afar. And once you see, you can never unsee. Ready for this? So let's start with the first sign, the one few notice, but many have already suffered from, the sudden mood swing when you shift your focus. 1. Her mood changes depending on your attention. One day she's smiling, the next, it feels like the world collapsed. Most men think it's PMS, just a woman thing, or mere sensitivity. But the Stoic man sees something deeper. Her emotional fluctuation is directly tied to how much attention she receives. If he pulls away a little, she becomes unstable. If he gives too much, she gets bored. This isn't random. It's a subtle way to test how emotionally available and manipulable you are. When she uses her mood as a thermometer to measure your devotion, it's a sign of emotional attachment disguised as charm. A man with self-awareness spots the cycle. First comes sweetness, then coldness, followed by indirect pressure. It's as if she's saying, "Feed me with your presence, or I fall apart." It may seem romantic, but it hides an emotional immaturity that's dangerous for those seeking a balanced relationship. A man without mental resilience quickly panics. He tries to please, chases after her, tries to prove his worth, and in doing so, loses the very respect she once had for him. But if he remains firm, stable, and doesn't bow to these shifts, something different happens. She begins to respect his axis. He doesn't become a father or a therapist, he remains a man. That's masculine virtue in its purest form, the strength to not bend under someone else's emotional dependence. If you feel like you constantly need to validate her mood, it's time to stop. Observe, question silently, and decide, is this love or emotional blackmail in disguise? Most men react. The Stoic observes, and that changes everything, because what comes next demands even more discernment. 2. She tests your emotional limits just to feel in control. She provokes, pokes, twists your words and watches, not because she's angry, but because she wants to know how far she can go. She wants to see how much you lose your balance in the chaos she creates. It's an unconscious, and sometimes very conscious, way of measuring your emotional strength. An average man reacts, yells, defends himself, but a man with emotional self-sufficiency simply observes, without over-explaining. This is where the brutal difference lies between a healthy relationship and a toxic power cycle. The test isn't explicit, but comes in subtle forms: delays, small lies, sarcasm, hurtful jokes masked as humor. If you destabilize often, she confirms, "I can dominate him." But if you stay centered with practical wisdom, without losing your composure, something shifts. Respect is born in the silence of your firmness. Men who don't understand this dynamic fall into self-deception. They think they need to prove they're understanding, tolerant, or mature. But in truth, they're just giving up their own dignity. Empathy is one thing. Being someone's emotional punching bag is another. Knowing the difference takes more than a good heart. It requires emotional maturity. If you've ever felt like you're being emotionally tested, it's because you are. And no, you don't need to go through that to keep the relationship alive. Emotional control isn't coldness, it's presence with boundaries. And if she pulls back when you don't react, don't be fooled. The next sign is even more subtle and more dangerous. 3. She plays the victim when confronted with her own contradictions. You point out something that doesn't make sense, a contradiction, unfair behavior, or a cruel remark. The response? Tears, drama, or silent resentment. She hides behind emotional pain as a shield to avoid taking responsibility. And the most dangerous part, she flips the script and makes you look like the villain. An unprepared man gives in. A man with discernment sees the emotional theater for what it is. This type of manipulation is more common than you think, but few recognize it. Playing the victim isn't just a cry for attention, it's a block against inner truth. When someone can't receive constructive criticism without emotionally collapsing, that's not maturity, it's denial. And men who don't catch this end up walking on eggshells, slowly erasing themselves until they lose their identity. The best way to face this is with self-awareness. Instead of reacting or trying to fix the chaos, observe. Ask yourself, is her pain genuine, or is it an escape from responsibility? In many cases, the answer will be painful, but necessary. If every time you point out something wrong she turns the scene against you, know this. It's not love, it's emotional control disguised as fragility. And what few men realize is that the next sign doesn't come in the form of tears, but in calculated silence. For she uses silence not to reflect, but to punish. Silence can be a temple or a weapon. When she goes quiet for hours, even days, and not to think, but to make you restless, something is off. It's not introspection, it's control. It's a passive form of emotional retaliation. A man with low mental resilience panics. He sends messages, apologizes, humiliates himself. And just like that, he hands her full control of the relationship. The issue isn't silence itself, but the intention behind it. The absence of words can become emotional punishment, a silent way of making you feel guilty. The Stoic man, on the other hand, also knows how to be silent, but for noble reasons: clarity, introspection, boundaries. He doesn't use silence to hurt, but to preserve his masculine virtue in the face of emotional storms. It's easy to confuse this behavior with time to think. But if that time is used to test you, to destabilize you, or to maintain a power game, it's unresolved emotional attachment. When silence turns into emotional torture, the relationship stops being a space for growth and becomes a psychological battlefield. If you notice that her silence always comes with judgment, distrust, or coldness, don't rush to apologize for something you don't even understand. Stand firm, because what often comes after that is the return of affection, but now with a hidden price tag. 6. She compares you to other men to control you emotionally. It might seem like a harmless comment. My ex used to do that. My friend's dad is more present. So-and-so is more mature than you. But the impact runs deep. The comparison isn't meant to inspire you. It's meant to weaken you. It's a blow disguised as a casual remark. A man with emotional maturity knows this isn't about growing together. It's about manipulation through inferiority. When she compares you, she's trying to create insecurity. And insecurity breeds obedience. The average man tries to prove his worth, entering a cycle of compensation. More attention, more submission, more bending. The Stoic man, however, sees the game. He understands that everyone has their own timing, strengths, and flaws, and no one thrives under someone else's emotional measuring stick. Comparison is a sophisticated form of self-deception, hers and yours, if you don't catch it. She deceives herself thinking you can become her version of the ideal man. You deceive yourself trying to be someone you're not, just to avoid discomfort. The result? You lose your essence, and she loses the respect she once had for you. So, every time you hear a comparison, breathe. Reflect. Stand firm. A man who knows his worth doesn't measure himself by others. He measures himself by his own inner truth. And my friend, that becomes even more necessary when she starts to seduce you, in those moments when you're at your weakest. 7. She turns up the sensuality when she feels she's losing you. When you start to pull away, she senses it. And suddenly, the woman who was once cold and distant becomes sweet, seductive, and engaging. Not because she rediscovered love, but because she felt control slipping away. That's when the game changes. To the man without discernment, it looks like reconciliation. To the Stoic man, it's just the final attempt to maintain emotional dominance. This trap is incredibly effective, because it appeals directly to desire, one of the hardest forces to master. Marcus Aurelius once said that true power lies in resisting what enchants you. Women instinctively know this. When she notices that your absence is working, she gives you everything you wanted, just to pull you back. If you lack mental resilience, you'll mistake this for genuine affection. This is where many men make the mistake of starting over. They think the game has changed, when in fact the cycle is just restarting. A man with practical wisdom doesn't react to immediate stimuli. He observes, analyzes, and only then decides. And often the best decision is not to return. Not because desire is lacking, but because dignity is abundant. Sensuality used as a form of control isn't connection, it's strategy. And when that no longer works, she turns to another equally dangerous, and even harder to detect, tool: the promise of change. 8. She only promises to change when she feels she's losing you. The words come drenched in emotion. Things will be different now. I understand everything. You deserve more from me. But interestingly, those phrases only appear when she senses she's about to lose you. Make no mistake, it's often not true remorse, it's desperation from losing control. The man without self-awareness gets emotional. The Stoic man watches calmly and waits for actions, not words. Promising change in a moment of risk isn't transformation, it's self-preservation. You'll notice, she never brought this up before, never reflected on her own mistakes while you were present, offering love. But now that you've set a boundary, she's suddenly awakened. Real awakening doesn't come from the fear of losing someone, it comes from the courage to face oneself. And that takes more than tears. This is where masculine virtue must hold strong. Don't accept promises as proof. Accept consistent, repeated, silent actions. A man with practical wisdom isn't fooled by the heat of the moment. He knows that many of these vows are desperate attempts to keep a crumbling emotional structure standing. If she only changes when she fears losing you, ask yourself, is this change really for me or for herself? Is it for the relationship or out of fear of not having someone else to manipulate? Question it, because right after this comes the next move, using emotional fragility as a shield. And few see it in time. 9. She acts fragile to avoid emotional responsibility. She says she can't handle it, that she's overwhelmed, that she has a difficult past. And then you, with your good heart, let your guard down. You take on more than you should, forgive the unforgivable, accept the unacceptable. But the man with discernment understands that constant fragility isn't vulnerability, it's escape. Escape from responsibility, from change, and from real emotional growth. Of course, everyone has their traumas, but maturity means not using them as recurring excuses. When fragility becomes a reason for everything, rudeness, absence, jealousy, manipulation, the problem isn't pain, it's deflection. A man with emotional maturity knows how to tell the difference between a woman who is healing and one who is using him as an emotional crutch. This emotional strategy is more common than it seems. And if you're not paying attention, you enter an endless cycle of understanding that feels more like emotional servitude. What you don't confront today becomes your prison tomorrow. And the most curious part, when you finally set a boundary, she may say you were insensitive. But deep down, you just stopped carrying a burden that was never yours. And the last sign is the most dangerous one, because it looks like affection, but it's pure control. 10. She controls everything you do with affection. She constantly asks where you are, who you're with, what you're doing. But not in an aggressive tone. She does it sweetly with that gentle charm. Says it's just concern. But in reality, she's quietly monitoring your freedom. Few men realize this, because it doesn't feel like control, it feels like care. But the man with emotional self-sufficiency senses there's something behind that excessive sweetness. This is one of the most sophisticated forms of emotional attachment. There are no screams, no obvious demands, just disguised surveillance under the mask of affection. And little by little, you begin to change your routine, stop doing what you enjoy, avoid situations just to not cause jealousy. What's the name for that? Control. So well disguised, it even looks like love. A man with mental resilience must stay alert. True love offers freedom, it doesn't suffocate. The problem is that many men confuse control with affection. They feel important for being so loved, when in truth, they're being emotionally managed. And when they try to set boundaries, they get a painful response. I just wanted to love you. If you feel the need to justify every step you take, every message you reply to, every minute you stay silent, maybe you're not being loved, you're being watched. And here ends the last sign. But it only ends for those who can see. Because for those who remain blind, the cycle just begins again. Now that you know the 10 signs, the question is direct. How many of them have you already ignored? How many are you living through right now, pretending not to see, out of fear of being alone, out of attachment, out of habit? Enough. A man who knows the truth can no longer live in illusion. From this point on, your mission isn't to control anyone, it's to master yourself. It's to strengthen your masculine virtue, set clear boundaries, and stop accepting crumbs disguised as love. The silence, the tests, the games, the conditional praise, all of that only works on those who don't know themselves. But now you do. So tell me, are you going to keep reacting to her emotions, or will you start steering your own life with discernment and practical wisdom? If this message stirred something in you, if it lit a signal inside, write in the comments. Now I see. I want to know who's waking up. And of course, subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications, and don't miss the next videos. Because here, what you learn and no one can take from you.